presentation, I want to make sure that we have a quick note on the profile changes, the new layout that was rolled out last week now. We released a preview about 10 days before, so you may have noticed the preview, but if you haven't spent any time in GuideStar recently, you should know that the old profile page, which was a little more colorful, these colors are a little more subdued. Frankly, we think a little more elegant. They represent the view that an individual is looking for, slightly more sophisticated than our last version. There are really no substantive changes at this level, the level you're looking at here. In a moment, you're going to see some mapping functionality that you will increasingly have access to, both from a research analysis as well as data submission if you're a nonprofit organization. But we want to highlight some of the changes that you'll see here. The first you see on the left-hand side, our new seal of transparency. This organization is noted as a platinum organization. You may recall that seal of transparency moved from the right-hand side of the profile, where it was listed looked a little more like a banner, to this more left-hand side, which we think emphasizes the importance of that level of transparency. On the right, you now see charity check more prominently provided. You'll also note, folks who are very familiar with charity check, we have also changed the way in which religious organizations are represented. They've always had the opportunity to have a profile on GuideStar.org, but because religious organizations are not typically required to file with the IRS, and because therefore we get that information not from their information not from the IRS like we do many other organizations, but directly from those churches, sometimes they weren't easily, that distinction wasn't immediately evident. Now the way in which churches are recognized in our profile is much more consistent with, and religious organizations, much more consistent with the profiles that exist for your standard nonprofit organizations. The navigation that you see here is very consistent with the navigation you'll recall in the last interface. Some of the color schemes have changed slightly, but you see that the same sort of tabular structure. Both the summary, program and results, financials, and operations would of course offer quick links to that substantive data in the profile itself. The IRS 990 form continues to be available, of course. You may recall, if you were a habitual user of the profile, that existed previously as a green button. That was very intentional. We really felt like folks were trying to find that constantly. We've integrated the color scheme a little more in this in the new profile view, but of course the functionality continues to be available. This is where you can download tax forms on nonprofit organizations. So again, hopefully you perceive this to be an aesthetic improvement. What we're going to transition to in a moment is a little more of the substantive improvement related to mapping. What you may not notice, and I'll tell you, we monitor use of GuideStar.org and are seeing consistent increase in mobile and tablet acquisition or use of the GuideStar.org platform. So the way in which the new profile is laid out is really mobile friendly. The last profile was not as nimble and agile when you accessed a profile on a smartphone or on a tablet. Today's layout is built to make sure that it offers a consistent and high quality view for a user, no matter what tool or mechanism they're using to gain access to this intelligence. So that was in many ways a primary driver of this change. We are, like many technology companies and organizations, are increasingly acknowledging that we have to be able to provide a high-quality user experience regardless of what the platform is that the individual is coming to us from. One of the real exciting improvements in the profile that was released last week was the advent of a more graphical or map-based geo tool set. This is our first real foray into this area. Historically, some of you may know that you could, of course, use your filters on GuideStar to filter by state or by county or by zip code, and that would really provide you what we all know in standard web languages, a sort of list view that would reveal the 58 or 500 organizations in that geographic filter that you may have applied. But moving forward, increasingly, we will be able to provide a much more sort of elegant and sophisticated view that incorporates mapping functionality. This is really an attempt, an ongoing attempt by GuideStar to meet users where they are, provide them with a consistent level of functionality that matches other industry standard and best-in-class tools that they're using. So just know that if you're looking for information related to the mapping, it's going to be a little sparse at first. Of course, our nonprofit organizations have to update their profiles in order to demonstrate where they are geographically on the geomapping. So this is going to be, as far as access to the data and what this will provide you as a researcher or analyst using GuideStar.org, this will mature over time as more and more organizations return to update their profile and essentially plot themselves on these maps so that you can then take advantage of this added functionality. But again, we're laying the groundwork for what's next. We think that 2018 will see a significant uptick in the number of organizations who are providing us with the information that allows them to be plotted on these maps and then gives you the intelligence that helps you understand where organizations are working and how you can better understand and support them. Just a note, from now on you will see that seals of transparency will have annual or years associated with them. So historically, an organization's nonprofit profile could be claimed and then could be updated. If that a nonprofit had not engaged with their profile over a 2-year period, that profile level would expire. And we are in active correspondence with thousands of organizations to remind them to update their profile, if nothing more, just to confirm that their information is still up to date so they can maintain their seal of transparency. Moving forward, we're increasingly going to have annual seals. You see this as the beginning of that process here, the 2017. We will likely have a 2018. We're in the middle of planning that seal process. This will give folks an opportunity, organizations an opportunity to demonstrate that they are seal holders year over year, rather than it just being perceived one way or the other that, oh, this is either the most accurate seal or this may be a seal that is a bit antiquated. A few FAQs that have come in through our community, and if anyone on this call is not taking advantage of GuideStar's community, I highly recommend it. It is a vibrant place where all of our webinars, instructions, and increasingly our announcements and correspondence with users is being cataloged and monitored. We have a tremendous and very active team here supporting that community, and increasingly peer-to-peer information and intelligence sharing is really vibrant in that area. I will say there are a few FAQs that we've seen and heard, and I just want to say these out loud. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, 990 is still accessible. Yes, the framing and the image of the button changed slightly, but for all intents and purposes, the exact functionality that existed in the last profile layout continues to be available to you. For nonprofit organizations, if you are a foundation or an aggregator or involved in nonprofit organizations, it's very important that you know that the seal that you have or that nonprofit has today remains valid and will continue to remain valid for 2 years. We hope that in the near future, we work very actively with the nonprofit sector as they often prepare for the giving season, which is going to be a nice segue into our Facebook event, to provide the most up-to-date information. As we see a significant uptick in use of GuideStar.org and use of our API, so our data distribution network. There's an increasing volume of inquiry and research that happens for the sector between mid-September and the end of the year, of course. All that's to say, a profile will continue to be eligible on an organization's a seal of transparency will continue to be available on an organization's profile. But it will be the old version, as you see here. It won't have the year denoted. Our hope is that folks come in and then update their profile, and then that would immediately grant them the new seal with the year on it. Lastly, and this has been a question that's come in quite frequently, this has to do with, again, as I mentioned, the mapping functionality and the sort of geo-friendly nature of what's available in the future is really going to be dependent on nonprofit organizations updating their profile information and providing that geo-coding information that allows us to plot that. While the functionality is available, it's going to be a little sparse on the data side, so bear with us as we continue, and to the degree you can, help us continue to guide nonprofit organizations to provide that key information that we know is an important part of donor and analyst decision making. A few other things that you should be aware of.
Hey, Adrian?
If you yes.
Hey, we had a question come in that I thought it would be great for you to address here. Someone was just complimenting the graphs that show up on the new profiles, and they were asking when it'd be available in a PDF version so that they can share it with their board of directors. Any insight on that?
So that is a great question. I will go off the record here and say that we are right now, as an organization, developing our 2018 roadmap. That roadmap is informed by customer feedback, innovations that we're seeing in the marketplace, opportunities for improvement within, and I always want to remind folks of this, within a very resource-constrained organization. GuideStar is essentially a nonprofit technology firm that raises 100%, has to cover 100% of its expenses every year. We do not have any kind of excessive capital available to do R&D for what's next. That being said, our roadmap for 2018 does include a refresh and the incorporation of this great new functionality and visuals into an organization's PDF related to this profile information. I cannot say today when that will be definitively delivered in 2018, but I can tell you that it is right now on the priority list. We will likely have better insight as we enter into the early part of Q4 once that roadmap gets finalized. Gabe, do you think that response was sufficient to that question?
I do, yeah, and thanks for providing that input, Adrian.
Great. I'll continue through a few other things that folks, again, you may know about what GuideStar is doing, but it's always helpful to get a few updates. We rolled out 2 new tools in the last few weeks. GuideStar Local rolled out about a month ago. I'm going to explain that here. GuideStar National, which is a national directory, is rolling out essentially right now. I'll just, as a reminder, let you know that GuideStar is always trying to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the inquiring minds where they are. And one of those initiatives is helping community foundations, United Ways, local coalitions of nonprofits to better represent and understand themselves, essentially to use GuideStar not just as a national search mechanism, but to focus search for giving local strategies. This is something that we've done for years through our product offering called Donor Edge, which really is among the most sophisticated and well-constructed tools that we offer. We also know that some organizations don't have the capacity or the interest to manage their own essentially online version of a customizable GuideStar, which is what Donor Edge is. They just want to be able to focus the attention of their analysts and researchers and prospective donors on organizations in their immediate community. So GuideStar Local really gives an organization the opportunity to drop an instance of GuideStar into their local web environment. Here you see an example of this in a live environment. Indian River Community Foundation, which is a Florida community foundation, they want to make sure that when their donors are looking to learn more about organizations in their community, they're actually accessing a version of GuideStar that is prescribed and pre-filtered to just highlight those organizations in their immediate community. It really serves to focus sort of guiding principles of how to make sure that a donor can find an opportunity to express their intent in a local environment. This is something that essentially has been available in the marketplace just 6 weeks. We're seeing some great interest and evidence of early adoption. So be aware that GuideStar doesn't just exist as a single standalone database that you and anyone in the country or the world might use. It's increasingly available to personalize for organizations or entities that really want to create a more boutique experience or make that instance of GuideStar their own. That functionality is essentially using a widget. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is just reminding folks that this is available and very easy to implement. If anyone on today's call wants to learn more, please reach out to me. I will. My contact information is going to be on the final slide. A number of folks are increasingly interested in making sure they're aware of how GuideStar is doing on what was our key initiative in late 2016 and continues to be a primary focus of the organization moving forward, and that is being able to provide evidence of results, quantified results that the sector is contributing to. Our platinum level, our platinum seal of transparency, commenced in May of last year. We are increasing the number of organizations who are voluntarily submitting results and populating their profile with the results information at about 50% per quarter, so a pretty rapid clip. But as you can see here, of course, this represents a very small subset of the overall sector. So at the end of June of this year, we had just under 3,000 organizations who had submitted results. We have about 8,000 results that have been published. The difference is an organization can submit results but then review them prior to publication. You see that we are averaging about 4 results per organization. The good news is about 70% of those results are coming in as selected from our common results catalog. This gives us an opportunity to look to the future and understand that because an organization might find a common result to capture and share with the sector and with sector leaders, we envision a time in the near future, primarily, as you see at the bottom here, by the end of 2018, when we will have hopefully around 10,000 organizations who are submitting results. We likely will have about 40,000 metrics in our database. If you can imagine 70% of those metrics will be from the Common Results Catalog, then we're talking about just under 30,000 metrics that will give us an opportunity to really start benchmarking results of organizations across NTE code, within geographies, by size, etc. So 2018 is going to be a continued sprint to try and make sure folks are crediting themselves with sharing that information. You may or may not know that an organization that has a platinum level of transparency, which is what they earn when they submit their results, gets the highest level of boost in search results. So if you're a common and frequent user of GuideStar.org, you may be increasingly seeing organizations that are platinum or gold showing up at the top of your result set. That is very intentional. We want to reward those who are expressing and sharing those results with the sector. Quick update on something that happened actually yesterday, and if you are a nonprofit organization or represent nonprofit organizations or work with them closely, you'll want to know about this. Obviously, the time has passed to participate in the live webinar, but we did have a webinar with Facebook yesterday. That webinar was very close to the highest level of registration we've ever had in the history of GuideStar. We had over 3,700 registrants. It's really focused on illuminating ways in which our partnership with Facebook, which started last November and really went public in March of this year, can help organizations better tell their story and capitalize on the ways in which Facebook can increase donor engagement. So if this is news to you and of interest to you, please go to guidestar.org/webinars. There's a recorded version of yesterday's webinar available either today or within the next 24 hours. And then, obviously, if this is something that is of continuing interest to you, I would recommend that you sign up to make sure you're receiving those alerts and announcements, many of which are published in our newsletters, etc. But you can be very deliberate about that if this is an area of interest for you. A few updates on what's coming in 2018. Gabe just pointed out via the question about where we are in the roadmap. So I can tell you definitively that while I can't tell you when exactly this will happen, Financial Scan, which has been a tool that is loved and adored by a small subset of our users, is going through a refresh. This is a tool we've developed in partnership with the Nonprofit Finance Fund, who's a premier provider of intelligence related to nonprofit finances in the sector. We're proud to be their partner, and the future is iterations. We will continue to partner with them, but we are refreshing this tool. It's been it's getting a little long in the tooth. New functionality will be rolled into pro-level access views. If you are a user of this tool today and want to be aware of or even advise us or contribute to ways in which you think we can improve this tool, again, you're going to see my email address at the conclusion of this slide deck. I would encourage you to reach out to me with questions, or if you want to provide insights or thoughts about how this tool can be improved, now is the time. I will connect you with our team who's doing that human-centered design work to ensure that we improve this and meet a greater set of needs and bring it sort of forward a little bit from a functionality and aesthetic perspective. Two other things, and this is really going to conclude the substance of our presentation today. If you were not aware, GuideStar was fortunate to receive a grant from the Kellogg Foundation earlier this year that's really accelerating some pilot work that we did with the California Endowment over the last few years. We recognize that in the same way that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a driving part of the dialogue in workplaces around the country today, certainly we see it happening in Silicon Valley, perhaps most publicly. That being said, we know that the nonprofit sector has both a rich history of demonstrating diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also has room for improvement. And we know that GuideStar can be a source of intelligence around how organizations are doing relative to their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we can also be ways in which, over time, organization can benchmark their own commitments and relative to these things with others in their community. So just know that we have a very active initiative in place today, again, thanks to the support of the Kellogg Foundation. If you would like to learn more about our work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you would like to contribute ideas or support in any way to our work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we would welcome that. We are very much in a listening mode right now, although we have always offered organizations the opportunity to submit their demographic information. You see some of the numbers listed here. We know we have a long way to go. We are in service to the sector and in service to those like you on today's call who want to learn more and use the data that you're gaining from GuideStar to make informed decisions. We are very excited about improvements that will be coming in 2018. Just want to make sure that you're aware and could contribute either ideas or support to our effort. The last thing I'll mention, I don't have a separate slide for it, but know that we have also an active project related to constituent feedback in the future, where if you use our profiles today, you see some of that feedback listed in a narrative form through our partnership with great nonprofits. We are revising that framing and going to change that view also to make it a little easier for organizations to represent themselves and allow their constituent feedback to be more readily available and visible to folks who want to learn how they're incorporating the communities they serve and the individuals they serve in the development of their programs. Last thing is a reminder, if you weren't aware of this, please know that GuideStar continues to be supporting the sector in making sure that organizations' profile data is available to auto-populate grant applications. We are getting an increasingly enthusiastic interest in this offering. That being said, there are lots of parts and pieces that have to work together to make sure this is successful, and we're always looking for your support in understanding what this tool can do for the sector, and also understanding how we can better connect with sector leaders to make sure this gets the voice and the adoption that it's looking for. Essentially, as a reminder, if you're not familiar, this allows an organization to auto-populate a grant application. As you see here, this is a proxy. GuideStar for grant applications is an API that can be turned on through grants management software. It's available then to users, which allows them to select data points that are already on their GuideStar profile and populate them on the grant application. What this does, is really provides, really essentially saves a grant-seeking organization about an hour of time per application. If you can imagine that an average organization might submit 100 competitive grants a year, that's about 100 man-hours saved. We know through both anecdote and survey research that this is saving hundreds of thousands of man-hours in the sector today, even though currently we're seeing light adoption. If you are a user of any of these grants management software tools, or if you know of foundations who are using these tools, this is where this GuideStar for grant applications is already available and can be turned on essentially immediately, and then made available to the next grants cycle for your organization if you're one of the users of this, or for a foundation that finds this type of efficiency in the marketplace a critical component of what's next. So I want to pause there. We sort of committed to making sure this was a 30-minute overview, providing insights about recent changes, particularly the profile views, as well as some insights about what's coming down the pike later in 2017 and into 2018. Gabe, if there are questions, now would be a great time for folks to chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a few questions here, and I'm going to try to answer some of these, and then some of them I'm going to send your way, Adrian. So the first question is a nonprofit asking where they can update the Where We Work map, or the geographical area served. And that is in the profile update tool on the left-hand side under the bronze category. You're going to want to go to the mission and programs section, and you're actually going to update that then on a program-by-program basis. So that's where you'll find that. Yep. Adrian, yeah?
Nothing.
Sorry, I think we might be having some technical difficulties here, but I'm just going to keep on going on answering some questions. The next question that we had was someone just asking for a reminder of what the different seals of transparency mean. And so I just wanted to run through that real quick. We have 4 different seals of transparency: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And those are awarded based on the amount of information that nonprofits update on their profile. Bronze information is basic contact information that can be done in about 10 to 15 minutes. Silver is financial information. It typically takes the form of an audited financial statement. That can be done in just a few minutes if you do have that audited financial statement. The gold level is qualitative information about the impact your organization is having, and it's 5 different questions that are called charting impact questions that we worked with Independent Sector and BBB Giving Alliance to create, that get to your goals, your missions, how you're measuring success, those sorts of things. And then platinum, which is the one that Adrian talked about a bit today, is the numbers behind the difference that your organization is making. So that's how the different seals of transparency are awarded. And let's see here. Great. So we have someone that's just thanking us for promoting transparency in the nonprofit sector. So Randy, thank you for that comment. We really appreciate it. Another question here about the updating where you work, and someone asked if that can be done at a county level, and the answer to that is yes. You can update by a county level, and you can also search in our profiles now on a county by county level. So that's an update recently as well. So I think that is about it for questions today. And we do want to be sensitive of timing, but we want to thank everybody for coming. We'll follow up with an email, and if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to us. I think Adrian's email is being blocked right now, but it's adrian.bordone@guidestar.org, or you can reach out to me. It's gabe.cohen@guidestar.org. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Gabe, thanks everyone.